Welcome to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keith in the studios of our flagship stations, Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. In addition, today, as always, we're on Birmingham Area Municipal Access and City Cable 15 of Southfield. All three of those channels are on Comcast, Channel 15 and AT&T, Channel 99. You can also join us on Channel 10 in Waterford on the Media Network of Waterford and on Orion Neighborhood Television, or ONTV, in Lake Orion and in Orion Township. Join us on the radio in the Birmingham, Bloomfield, and Troy areas on 88.1 WBFH, the BIFA service of the Bloomfield Hills School District. And find us online live from 10 a.m. to 12 noon, Monday through Friday, on our Facebook pages at Civic Center TV 15 and Lakes FM, on our website at civiccentertv.com, as well as on My Michigan TV or MyMy by visiting mymytv.com. And there you'll also learn more information about their other original programming and imported programming from all across the state of Michigan, all about the state of Michigan, and how you can download their free smartphone and smart TV apps. And if you want to learn more about all of our partnering TV, radio, and web outlets that join us each and every day live and live to tape, you can visit our website at civiccentertv.com/megacast and go to and click on any one of those links that takes you to our partnering stations' websites, so you can learn more information, view their other original programming throughout the day, and learn more about the ways that they are celebrating their local communities as well. Also on our Megacast page, you'll find links that will take you to our on-demand pages for our full episodes and each individual interview on the show in case you miss any part of our live programs or miss any full episodes and want to tune in. You can do so on your own time at civiccentertv.com/megacast. Then over on our coronavirus page, we have very helpful information at the top of the page from the CDC, the MDHHS, and the Oakland County Health Division, so you can stay up to date on the latest information and everything that you need to know about COVID-19, including the Omicron variant, the Delta variant, the booster shots, vaccines, where you can get them, what they're all about, how they were made, how they've been tested, how they've been studied, and new information that continues to come in about how COVID-19 spreads and how we can prevent the spread and eventually bring this pandemic to endemic status. That is at the top of our page at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, where just below we have the top stories making headlines each and every day across the state of Michigan from journalistic outlets all across the Great Lakes state. And today, our top story, as the governor last night made her fourth and final State of the State address during this term of her gubernatorial run. This is from Bridge, Michigan. Whitmer says cutting taxes, boosting schools, Michigan are two of her biggest goals for 2022. And the Michigan GOP agrees, but the devil is in the details. Could there be a common ground, after all, between Governor Whitmer and state Republicans controlling the legislature? On Wednesday, the governor used the latest State of the State address of her, the last State of the State address of her term to propose tax cuts, investments in mental health initiatives, and the biggest school aid budget in decades. Despite being at odds with Whitmer over the past 3 years, Republicans have similar goals for this year, but details may vary significantly, and this is an election year, which will also play a factor. Quote, thematically, I think there are things that Republicans and Democrats will hear and find common ground on, said David Gunther, a senior strategist for state affairs of the Free Market Mackinac Center for Public Policy in Midland. He said, however, quote, the details are going to be a bit thorny, or a lot thornier to work out. Continuing on, hours before Whitmer's speech, Senate Majority Leader Mike Shirkey, a Republican from Clark Lake, outlined priorities for this year that shared similarities to the ones made by Whitmer, including heavy investment into the state's mental health system. But he devoted much of his discussion with reporters to blasting Whitmer as being, quote-unquote, ineffective and tone-deaf, and saying her COVID-19 policies caused, quote-unquote, economic turmoil, end closed quote. Over the years, though, Governor Whitmer and the Republicans in the state legislature have come together to pass major policies, including a 2019 overhaul of the state's no-fault insurance system that led to $400 per car rebates, as well as $1 billion in state incentives that led to Tuesday's announcement by General Motors Corporation of $7 billion in electric car investment in the state of Michigan. Quote, I know at times our nation's capital feels hopelessly gridlocked, but at our state capital, Republicans and Democrats have shown we can come together to put Michiganders first, said Governor Whitmer, who spoke from a Detroit diesel plant in Redford Township. For the second straight year, the governor's speech was virtual, a safety precaution due to COVID-19. Governor Whitmer also used the speech to push for a cap on insulin prices and a $2,500 rebate for electric vehicle sales. Here are some of the other highlights, including areas where she could find agreement with Republicans in the state legislature in her final year of this term. Number one, cutting taxes. Governor Whitmer wants to repeal the quote-unquote pension tax, a promise she made while running for governor in 2018. The proposal would do away with Governor Rick Snyder's so-called retirement tax that applies a 4.25% income tax on pensions depending on where the taxpayer is born. Quote, if we phase it out over the next few years, we can save 500,000 households in Michigan an average of $1,000 per year, said the governor on Wednesday. Shirkey, who voted for the pension tax in 2011, told reporters he would only consider the repeal if it affects, quote, all citizens, end closed quote. Whitmer and Shirkey also agree in principle on plans to increase the state's earned income tax credit for low and moderate income families. They did not, however, offer details. More than 738,000 Michiganders received a total of $110.6 million in earned income tax credit during the 2019 tax year, averaging $150 per capita, according to the Department of Treasury. Senate Republicans want taxes cut in different ways. However, legislation lowering individual and corporate income taxes to 3.9% advanced Wednesday out of the Senate Finance Committee. The rate is now 4.25% for individuals and 6% for corporations. Agreement number two, record funding for education. Whitmer and Shirkey both want to see record high funding in the education sector of the government, saying, quote, soon I'll introduce a school aid budget that will mark the biggest state education funding increase in more than 20 years without raising taxes, Whitmer pledged on Wednesday night. Continuing on, Michigan ranked 25th in K-12 school spending last year, according to an August 2021 report by the Education Data Initiative. Elementary and secondary schools spend $11,783 per pupil annually. Both Whitmer and Shirkey said that they are committed to policies that keep students in the classroom. Earlier on in the pandemic, the governor's administration shut down in-person instruction, but those decisions are now left to individual school districts. Agreement number three, investment in mental health. After a November 30th shooting at Oxford High School that killed 4 students, many lawmakers have talked about the importance of spending on mental health initiatives. Governor Whitmer proposed a quote-unquote bold investment next year to help schools hire over 560 nurses, social workers, and counselors. She did not, however, offer any specifics in her State of the State address. Whitmer also hopes to be able to retain and recruit mental health workers in the state. Last year, Shirkey and State Representative Mary Whiteford, a Republican from Casco Township, introduced legislation that would eliminate the state's process of contracting with community mental health agencies to provide treatment. Shirkey suggested the state could tap into the over $7 billion in unspent COVID-19 relief money to invest in mental health services and provide retention and recruitment. That full article from Bridge, Michigan, on our website at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. We're also on Bridge, Michigan, making headlines as the coronavirus tracker provided updates that were provided, of course, by the state of Michigan yesterday, as they provide those updates on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday afternoons. The Omicron variant of COVID-19 is shifting its grip on Michigan as cases fall in Metro Detroit and rise in the southwest, central, and northern portions of the state. Michigan reported 27,423 new infections on Wednesday, or 13,712 for each of the past 2 days. That lowered the average daily count to 14,335 over the past week. Monday's average was 15,332 daily cases, while it was 17,589 a week ago. Detroit's rate is now 99 cases per 100,000 residents over the past week, a drop from 149 per 100,000 a week ago. Counts are also falling in Wayne, Macomb, and Oakland counties as well, but they are rising in 36 other counties in the state, including Ingham and Saginaw counties and much of the northern lower peninsula. The state also reported an additional 379 COVID deaths, 268 of which were determined after a review of medical and health records. Of the total, 327 of those deaths were in January. Hospitals in the state are treating 4,027 confirmed or suspected COVID patients, down by 225 from Monday and down nearly 1,000 from the January 10th peak of 5,009 patients. Over the most recent 2 days of testing data, 28% of tests came back positive. That's still extremely high, but below Monday's rate of 29%. That full article from Bridge, Michigan on our website, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. And lastly, making headlines today, students at Central Michigan University receiving some good news as those that were offered full tuition scholarships mistakenly were told that they have won them indeed. This is from Detroit News. Central Michigan University is upping scholarships for nearly 6 prospective students after news spread that the school had mistakenly notified them over the weekend they'd won a full ride scholarship that included room and board, officials confirmed on Wednesday. CMU said that 58 prospective students received messages while accessing the university portal informing them that they had won the Centralis Scholars Award, which gives students full tuition, room and board, money toward books and supplies, and a $5,000 quote-unquote study away award. Students who receive the scholarship are also able to participate in special honors classes. But those contacted hadn't won the prestigious award, the university said in a Wednesday statement. The message, officials said, went out quote-unquote inadvertently when the university staffers were, quote, testing a new messaging technology over the weekend, end closed quote. In a quote from university spokesman Aaron Mills, he said, quote, CMU sincerely regrets the mistake and understands the disappointment and anger these students and their families must be feeling. Continuing on, CMU's executive director of admissions personally contacted the families of the students who were identified as being in the portal during testing on Sunday, to apologize for the miscommunication. Mills added late Wednesday that the university, quote, will be reaching out to each of the 58 students who saw the congratulatory message regarding the Centralis scholarship and offering to increase their award amount to the equivalent of a full tuition scholarship, end closed quote. It is not clear how much more money that means for the affected prospective students. But tuition for U.S. residents at CMU is estimated to be $12,750 a year. Mills said the university was unable to answer any further questions. The Centralis Scholarship Award is considered the premier merit scholarship offered at CMU, according to its website. It is only open to students who have a minimum of a 3.7 grade point average who have already been admitted to the university. That full article with additional details from the Detroit News on our website at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we'll get the show going at 10:20. We'll be joined by Lisa Bahm, the Supervisor of Training and Community Outreach, Business and Career Services at JVS Human Services. At the bottom of the hour at 10:40, Jim Holcomb, the new President and CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, will join us on the show. We'll kick off the 11 o'clock hour with Lisa Machesky from a Shared Detroit-supported charity and nonprofit, the Oakland Literacy Council. She is their executive director. At 11:20, we'll be joined by Rachel Britz from Vitrine Gifts, located in Plymouth. And then we have a very special presentation coming up for you at 11:30. We'll have an extensive update on where we're at with the COVID-19 pandemic, with the Omicron variant in particular, where hospital systems are, and how this recent surge has been affecting them. From Dr. Betty Chu from Henry Ford Health System, in a segment that is brought to you in part by the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce in partnership with us here at Civic Center TV, the flagship station of the Megacast. That will be coming up at 11:30. That'll bring us right up to the end of the show, so you'll want to tune in for sure for that here on our family of TV, radio, and web outlets, as well as on the Facebook page of the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce, facebook.com/West Bloomfield CC. We're going to take a break. On the other side, Lisa Bahm from JVS Human Services will join us. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
If you are struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to a $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit, or call toll-free at 833-511-0311.
A public service announcement from 89.3 Lakes FM.
Whether you're the city,
the county,
or the Huron River Watershed Council,
we work together to protect water resources for everyone.
Most of the pollution entering our rivers is carried by rainwater that runs off roads, parking lots, and rooftops.
A rain garden helps catch stormwater runoff.
Rain gardens and their plants help dirty runoff soak into the ground.
you can do your part to help keep our water clean.
Learn about rain gardens and native plants.
So consider a rain garden in your home landscaping.
Catch the runoff with a rain garden.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
I couldn't breathe at all. There was lots of talk about putting me on a ventilator. I thought I was gonna die. I was 39 weeks pregnant and had a scheduled C-section. During that time, I got COVID and was hospitalized for a month. I had a blood clot in my lungs. It caused me to go into right-sided heart failure. I was really scared. I kept texting my husband and my mom, telling them how scared I was, and I was worried that he was gonna grow up without a mom. And then I was worried if, when I did get home, that he wouldn't know who I was. You know, being 27 and a mom and a wife and having that all almost taken away from me. It's scary, and if a vaccine can prevent that from happening, why not? Get your vaccine. I don't want this to happen to anybody else.
A message from the staff of Michigan's Crime Victim Compensation Program.
Anyone can be a victim of crime
and suffer lasting trauma, physically, emotionally, and financially.
But you are not alone.
If you're struggling financially due to a crime,
we're here
for you.
Find out if you qualify for crime victim compensation.
Call 877-251-7373 or visit michigan.gov/crime-victim.
A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Victim Services.
If you are struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to a $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit or call toll-free at 833-511-0311.
A public service announcement from 89.3 Lakes FM. Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe. You can learn more about our show by visiting our website at civiccentertv.com/megacast. Joining me now is Lisa Bahm, Supervisor training and Community Outreach, Business and Career Services at JVS Human Services, with us on the Megacast. Lisa, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Tyler.
Appreciate having you on. So you have a really interesting program coming up next week, Tuesday, February 1st. JVS will be putting on a Zoom webinar entitled How to Wow Your Future Employer in an Interview. Tell us about that upcoming webinar, what people can expect to learn as they participate.
Yeah, we're very excited to host this webinar. You know, it's a new year, and it's a great time for people to reassess where they're at, both personally and professionally, and perhaps boost their skills and look for a new job. So we've brought together two human resource professionals to conduct this webinar and give advice and strategies how to interview effectively, both online and in person.
And so, as you mentioned, both online and in-person interviews, it's critical to be effective in both of those interviews to wow this new employer and put your best foot forward in potentially being hired by this company or by these companies that you're interviewing with. But as you said, some of these interviews may be in person, some of them may be virtual. For many, a lot of these interviews over the past couple of years have been virtual interviews. What are some of the common mistakes that we're often hearing about or what we're often seeing people fall into as they're interviewing over Zoom as opposed to an in-person interview?
You're absolutely right. You know, more and more companies are using the online method of interviewing. At least the first interview is conducted that way. You know, the best advice is to treat it like you would any other face-to-face interview. You know, it's important to be prepared and do your research before the interview, dress professionally from head to toe, think in advance of what types of questions might be asked of you, and make sure that, in particular, that your background is clear of clutter, that your family members or pets don't come in line of the camera, and that you're putting your best foot forward.
And so what about the interview itself? What should applicants be mindful of to do or not do during a virtual interview themselves? Because their behavior in person, their body language is going to be key in that interview. It's going to be, I would think, even more inflated in importance in a virtual interview because you're not in that moment with that person in the flesh. You're over an internet connection.
Yeah, Tyler, it's a whole different experience. And, I think you have to be really conscious of your body language and what that's portraying. Like in any situation, an impression is made of you in the first couple seconds. So my recommendation is that, you prepare ahead. You make sure that your technology is working appropriately, that your lighting is good. Perhaps you do a trial run with somebody else the day before to make sure everything is set up properly for you. And, oftentimes we'll hear our clients say that, they weren't able to do the interview on their computer, but instead did it on their phone. So, it's really critical that you think of this as an opportunity to portray the best that you can be, regardless of what it is, what technology you're using.
We're joined by Lisa Bahm from JVS Human Services on the Megacast, talking about the best ways you can go about wowing your next interview as you interview for jobs during this pandemic and going forward, as I would imagine these virtual interviews, especially for people that are interviewing for jobs out of state or across the state, across the country, will be something that continues to be part of our future. So what are some of those do's and don'ts, both for in-person and virtual interviews, that may be overlooked by people and maybe so subtle that they can't even really mindfully prevent them in most cases unless they're actively thinking about not portraying these behaviors in their interviews?
The most important thing is be prepared, and even role play. At JVS Human Services, we offer a variety of services to job seekers, and one of those is to do a mock interview. So our career counselors and our employment specialists will provide that service to you where you can actually practice in advance of that interview. And, that gives you the most amount of confidence going into it, is to rehearse and know exactly what key points you want to express and how you want to market yourself in that interview. Whether it is in person or virtual, it should be treated the same way.
We're joined by Lisa Bahm from JVS Human Services on the Megacast. And so where is the job market at right now? Because in the past, recent past, we've seen there's been a lot of job openings in a lot of different sectors, and businesses were claiming to be really struggling to find good candidates to fill those jobs, or anybody even just willing to fill those jobs and be trained. Is that where we're still at? Or are there still a lot of these good jobs that are available if people are looking?
Yeah, there is still a labor shortage out there. Employees are struggling to find the right candidates. I think that employees are looking for options. What's going to give me work-life balance? Are there opportunities for flexibility to work remote or to work in a hybrid type of situation? But in the end, it has to be a win-win on both sides, right? And that is where an interview is critical. It's not only an opportunity for the employer to find the right candidate, but it's also an opportunity for the employee to make sure that that is the right company and culture where they'll be the most successful. So therefore, we're hoping that this webinar will provide some insight to employees as they're doing their interviews to respond in the right way to be able to assess whether that's the right fit for them.
We're joined by Lisa Bahm, Supervisor of Training and Community Outreach Business and Career Services at JVS Human Services, joining us on the Megacast. Their How to Wow Your Future Employer in an Interview webinar will be on February 1st, which is next week, Tuesday. You can learn more information and how you can register by sending an email to employmenthelp@jvshumanservices.org. or calling 248-233-4245. That phone number, 248 234-4245 and the email employmenthelp@jvshumanservices.org. And so, Lisa, continuing on, if someone in the audience does want to participate, we gave out the information they can, how they can contact for more information or to register. What else should they know about this seminar? Can they participate? Is it going to be simply a seminar where someone is speaking to them on these topics? Are they going to be able to also have a Q&A session? And who will be leading this discussion?
Yes, actually, I will be facilitating the discussion. The two participants are Jackie Leskowski, who is the Director of Human Resources for Zoran Technologies, which is a medical device developer in Ann Arbor, and Tasha Kelly, who is a recruiter for JVS Human Services, are the two human resource participants on this call. And folks will have the opportunity to ask questions through the webinar. So we hope that, it'll be very informative and helpful to our job seekers. And by all means, we encourage job seekers to reach out to JVS through those, through our phone number, 248-233-4245, or employmenthelp@JVS Human Services, to take advantage of the many resources we have. Career counseling, job search assistance, we offer computer training, we review resumes and LinkedIn profiles, and we offer financial education. So there's so many wonderful opportunities available. You can also visit JVS's website to learn more about the many programs we have at www.jvshumanservices.org. So we encourage people to take part in this. It's a great chance to re-energize and have hope for the new year.
So, Lisa, before we let you go here in a couple of minutes, what are some of the other services that are provided by JVS Human Services for those that are seeking jobs? And maybe what are some other upcoming seminars and upcoming events, virtually or in person or both, that people may be interested to attend in the coming months?
Yeah, we offer so much. And on our website, we have a variety of webinars that have been created on giving assistance in your job search. We offer computer training programs. We have a 6-week Microsoft Office training program that's conducted in person. This is a hands-on learning experience for job seekers to brush up on their skills. We also offer online classes with 800 different topics to boost your skills in a variety of different ways. Just a whole variety of different things to serve your needs. So, don't wait. Start now. The job search process takes a little while sometimes, and it's great to start that momentum. And again, like I said earlier, it really boosts your confidence and gives you the energy and feeling empowered to make changes happen.
Well, Lisa, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us, giving us some of that really helpful advice for job seekers on how to wow their potential next employer in interviews, and to tell us more about that upcoming seminar on February 1st through JVS Human Services.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Again, the contact information, if you would like to participate in the seminar on February 1st, employmenthelp@jvshumanservices.org, or calling 248-233-4245. We're going to take a break. On the other side, we'll be joined by the new president and CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. Jim Holcomb joins us next. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
Certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanted to get back on it. People ask, How your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
Whether you're the city,
The county.
or the Huron River Watershed Council.
as partners working together to protect our water resources, we agree.
Pet waste is the source of harmful bacteria in the Huron River.
When it's left on the ground, it can wash into the storm drains.
These lead directly to our streams. No filters, no treatment.
Here's one thing we know that can help keep our water clean.
Pick up pet waste and trash it.
Pick up pet waste and trash it.
So pick up pet waste and trash it.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
Who is struggling right now?
I am.
My son is.
Many are struggling with anxiety, depression, and substance use. Before it becomes a crisis, reach out to MyCal, the Michigan Crisis and Access Line for free confidential support 24/7. Available in the Upper Peninsula and Oakland County. Just call or text 1-844-44-MyCal or chat online at michigan.gov/MyCal. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Motorcyclists are hard to see. To keep everyone safer, it's important to always look for them and know where most crashes occur. 84% of motorcycle and vehicle crashes happen on streets, not highways. And most crashes with motorcyclists occur when vehicle drivers are turning left. So before turning, especially to the left, make sure you look for motorcyclists. Then look again. It could save a life.
To Sofia and Gabriel. Even though these old knees can't follow on your adventure to the forest today, these flowers represent my love. These stitches and threads join us together. And wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
72.7% of high school students get less than the recommended 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. This can cause pain, obesity, and can very negatively affect your mental health. When you have a consistent 7 to 9 hours of sleep every day, you get sick less often, lose more weight, and have better relationships with those around you. For more information about the dangers of sleep deprivation, go to sleepfoundation.org. This message is brought to you by the WBHS Digital Media Arts Program and 89.3 Lakes FM.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe. You can learn more information about our show by visiting our website at civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll learn more information about each of our partnering TV, radio, and web outlets, and find all of our shows and each interview on demand. civiccentertv.com/megacast. Joining us now is the president and CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, Jim Holcomb, who just took over as president and CEO after succeeding former president and CEO Rich Studley. Jim, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Appreciate having you on. So first, give us a little bit of a background on you. Tell us about some of your accomplishments in the past in your career, and what led you to the Michigan Chamber of Commerce.
Sure. I've been in Lansing since approximately 1991. I came here as a law student and a legislative staffer. I've worked in the House. I've worked in the Senate. I've been a chief of staff for a Speaker of the House. I've been a legal counsel. I did practice law for 4 years with a mid-major firm here in Michigan. And now I've been at the Michigan Chamber for 14 years, committed to doing everything I can to help businesses in Michigan succeed. This is a real home for me. It's where my passion is, and I'm glad to be here. And Rich Studley did a tremendous job for us for 40 years here at the Chamber, and I'm excited to see where we take the Chamber into the future.
Yeah, Rich did great work with the Michigan Chamber business community here in our state. Certainly appreciated his service over several decades at the helm at the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. So now you're coming in a transition period, of course, for a transition of leadership, but also as we continue to transition from the thick of the COVID-19 pandemic into what hopefully is nearing the end of the pandemic and the post-pandemic stage, and that's an interesting place to come in as a new leader. So right now, where does Michigan's business community stand as it regards to recovery from the bulk of the COVID-19 pandemic and those challenges that they faced, and also in building a prosperous future for businesses current and oncoming in the near future?
Certainly many of our businesses across the state and Michigan Chamber members are a little battered. It's been a rough couple of years, but more importantly, they're optimistic. As you can imagine, we're constantly in conversation with our members, and we've recently surveyed them. 80% are saying that COVID is still having a negative impact on their business operations. But even with that, they see the ability of what can be. They see that they've come through the worst of it, hopefully, and hopefully we get COVID behind us from a health standpoint. But they're feeling optimistic about the state because they've learned how to be entrepreneurial. They've learned how to adapt. They've learned how to coordinate with each other. And I think one of the best things we saw is, regardless if you're a Michigan Chamber member or not, you were getting help from us during COVID. And many other organizations did the same. And it was wonderful to see Michiganders helping each other and all just trying to make sure that we had the best information, the best resources, and the ability to move our communities forward, because that's what's going to help the state. Individually, we have to strengthen our communities, and the state overall will do very well.
And so one of the key challenges that has arisen over the course of the pandemic, particularly as businesses have reopened after the shutdowns, after all the restrictions were ultimately lifted late last year or in the middle portions of last year in 2021, has been a continued issue with staffing shortages. And it's something we just recently talked about with Lisa Bahm from JVS Human Services about some advice for nailing your job interview, but also talking about the state of the staffing situation across the board in the state of Michigan. Are we seeing that improving? Are there any signs of that being relieved in the future? And regardless of that situation, what are businesses in the state of Michigan doing as of now to attract that talent to come back to the workplace or new talent to come in to the workplace here in Michigan?
We're certainly seeing an improvement, but there's still a long way to go. The talent crisis and shortage is just really an impediment to growth here in Michigan. And for current businesses, just being able to operate at pre-pandemic hours is a struggle. I think if we go to any of our restaurants and bars across the state and a lot of our social outlets, it's really hard to continue to keep those hours of operations for the full day because of the staff shortage. And so they're being creative. They're trying to work cooperatively with each other. You see businesses who share staff for the people who really do want to put in the hours. You're seeing better screening on hiring, I believe, as well. So the people you're hiring are going to be a long-term employee. They're people committed to your organization and to working with each other. But I think going forward, it's going to be a continued evolution. What we're seeing, whether you call it the Great Resignation or just people reevaluating the work-life balance, employers are also having to modify their approach. We have here at the Michigan Chamber, we've gone to the option of working remote, and we're finding ways to still be productive. And in many cases, we've actually increased our efficiency, and you're seeing that in businesses across the state. But we certainly aren't out of the woods by any stretch. And it's going to take the continued entrepreneurial spirit and the flexibility of job providers to really get back to where they were. But I think we'll not only get back to where we were, we're going to be better. And in the future, we're going to be stronger for it. Nobody wished the pandemic upon anyone, but we're learning a lot of good lessons. And I think we're having a good rebalance of a work-life balance and employers and employees working together, not only to keep themselves safe, to keep their customers safe, to make sure their businesses are strong operations.
And it seemed like for a while there was a bit of a clash between employers that were looking to fill these positions and potential employees, either those that had previously been furloughed or had been laid off or had stepped away during the thick of the pandemic and had then said they weren't going to come back for one reason or another. You mentioned many of them: work-life balance, wage issues, demands or requests for better benefits or benefits altogether. And now we're seeing a little bit of a shift where there is that flexibility in those negotiations from the businesses to potential employees and from potential employees to the businesses as well. What advice have you, as your organization, been giving to businesses, or what have members of your Chamber of Commerce found to be the ways that they've had to modify their approach to hiring new staff, to finding that new talent, to adjust to this new paradigm while also while also modifying their business plan so that they're able to operate as normal and successfully as possible despite these current challenges.
Yeah, I think the best practice, what we've seen is just better communication in the hiring process, better communication in training and onboarding your staff, better communication in how you evaluate staff. I think the more that employers and employees talk, the better the operations of the organization. And we're seeing that pan out. People are becoming more efficient because they're sharing their best practices, not only with other organizations, but more importantly, internally. I know I've just conducted a staff survey here, and I'm meeting one-on-one with all of our employees just to figure out, okay, what's working, what's not, where can we improve? We have a very strong culture here and a culture of being open and honest. And I think the more that employers adopt that, it's going to help them. But the point you referenced earlier that I think is absolutely the most important, it's employers and employees discussing how to do this. The government top-down mandates don't work. It's not a one-size-fits-all, whether we're talking about what to do with masks, what to do with vaccines, or how to run your day-to-day operations. Businesses operate the best when they're collaborative internally, and government, unfortunately, too often gets in the way and puts up a needless hurdle.
And what we're seeing, too, that's really nice, and you mentioned the opportunities for better training, for advancement, for changing directions if people decide that they need a change, or they'd like a change, or they'd like to challenge themselves in a different way within a company, whereas before it was very rigid. If you wanted to make that change, you had to undergo that training on your own time. It could take years. It could take a lot of money to get that retraining. And now we've seen these businesses say, we want to keep you on our staff while we train you to transition somewhere else and while you help to train somebody to take over your position. And that brings me to some of the great opportunities that are going to be coming into Michigan in the near future. We heard about the $7 billion investment that General Motors is making in the state of Michigan for building electric vehicles and for building batteries for electric vehicles as well. And so there's great opportunity also coming to the state of Michigan. How does that opportunity for changes in the paradigm of different industries, especially critical industries like the automotive industry in the state of Michigan, help to aid that change that you've mentioned in training and in advancement in a company that's been so critical to maintaining your employee base and retaining staff long term?
Yeah, whenever we can get great new expansion here in Michigan, it's a wonderful thing, not only for the businesses that are doing it, but all the ancillary businesses. Yeah. And as you said in training, technology is just changing our lives so rapidly. And when you can have an employee train another employee, it's just wonderful because they're already cooperative. They're already embrace the culture of the company. But also what you were saying before, just making sure, the right people are in the right seats. You can have a great employee who's fairly competent at their job, but they don't enjoy it. How much better is it to find that place in the organization where they truly love what they're doing and they're actually more productive? And it just helps everybody get along better. And then you have the circular impact back to having the work-life balance. The best thing we can do, I think, as employers is make sure that our employees are not only the best employee, but we set them up to be the best brother, the best husband, the best volunteer baseball coach. If you're happy at your job, you're a better participant in your community. And I truly believe that more that we can help our employees be great participants in the community, everybody's going to benefit. Because we are all in this together, and we need to just make sure that we're taking the opportunity when you have something like Jim, and what a wonderful investment and a great company coming in, but it also gives the state the ability to expand and keep that, not only the manufacturing talent here, but grow the intellectual talent and how much R&D can we bring into an area just to make sure that Michigan is always on the cutting edge. We just have to embrace the change and not be scared of it.
We're joined by Jim Holcomb. He is the president and CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, joining us on the Megacast. And last night, Jim, Governor Gretchen Whitmer made her final State of the State address of her current term in office. What were some of the parts of what she had said last night, or some of the topics she spoke about, such as taxes in particular, additional funding that may be placed for businesses for recovery? What were some of those key parts that she touched on last night that particularly garnered your attention and the Chamber's attention going forward, as Michigan, the state government and local government as well, going to have to be a key part in aiding our businesses recovering from all of the damage and all of the challenges, more so, that they experienced during the pandemic?
I really appreciated the governor's tone last night. I think one of the biggest impediments we have to progress here in Michigan and across the country is just kind of the snarky nature that politics has become. It's about tweets and a press release and not real debate. And the more that Republicans, independents, Democrats, everybody sits down and actually debates and discusses an issue, the better we're going to be. So I appreciated that she was trying to set that tone. I would have liked to have heard more details. Anytime we can focus on job creation and increasing the work-life balance and bringing businesses to Michigan and making Michigan economically competitive, not only but in the state, but in the world, that's a great thing. But we really need to hear the details. And I'm hopeful that she'll reach across the partisan aisle, that she'll work with Speaker Wentworth and Senate Majority Leader Shirkey and really find ways that we can come together as a state. We need to fix our roads. We need to have better infrastructure. We need to make sure that there are training opportunities, that there's affordable housing, and we deal with daycare for working mothers and working parents across the state. We don't have a shortage of issues, but we do have a shortage, I'm afraid, of real debate. And I'm hopeful that we can take her speech last night that had some good themes, but really develop that in the legislative process. And, you know, we're urging her as well as legislative leaders, put down the partisan banter and let's get together in committee rooms and find results and practical solutions to real problems. And so one of the other forms of good news that's come in recently from the state is the revenue numbers have shown they brought in way greater numbers in revenue in the state of Michigan over the past several years. How can that extra revenue aid in the recovery of Michigan's businesses, and what goals does the chamber have in working with our leaders in Lansing, both in the legislature and in the governor's office? Should it be Governor Whitmer? Should it be somebody else in the near future after the 2022 elections to tap into some of that revenue bonus that we've seen over the past few years to aid Michigan businesses in their recovery? Well, I think what we need to recognize is a lot of the increased revenue is just federal dollars coming down, whether it was from borrowed money or federal taxes, and we need to treat it as such. Our goal is, what we're talking with legislators and the governor's office about, is be aggressive with the budgeting, but be smart with it. Don't create and spend dollars that create long-term debt burdens that are going to impact your budget 3, 4, 5 years down the road when all this money dries up. Let's treat this like one-time money and find those areas. Is it equipment in schools? Is it infrastructure? Is it training opportunities? Is it developing affordable housing? What can we do and almost treat this money as a one-time expenditure so we don't create a long-term burden? I'm worried that we're going to go through and this money is going to seem endless, and it's not. The money dries up, and we have to make sure Michigan is economically positioned and fiscally sound 2, 3, 4 years from now, not just get the gratification of doing some quick spending now. So there's a lot of talk about tax cuts. That's great, and the money should go back to taxpayers. But let's find the most efficient way to do that, and let's not, like I said, create a burden later. It doesn't help you to cut taxes now. In 2, 3, 4 years, you're back at the trough trying to increase taxes. Let's treat taxpayers fairly and give them the money back now without creating a long-term problem. We're joined by Jim Holcomb, President and CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce on the Megacast. Jim, a few more minutes with you before we'll say goodbye today. Anything else that we haven't discussed that you would like to touch on, or any other information that Michiganders should be paying attention to as it affects our businesses? Well, I think what Michiganders should be doing is getting more involved. I think, as we talked earlier, the nature of politics right now and the discourse is not great. That's going to change when citizens get involved, when they talk to their local elected representatives, their state senator, their state representative, and share the opinions and ideas of what's important to them as a constituent. We really need the public to bring their ideas forth, because the people we elect are the ones representing us. Michigan has a great opportunity to continue the progress we're making and to have a wonderful future. We just can't waste it on partisan politics. We need to make sure we're making smart decisions, and the budget is the first place to start. That's the most important job the legislature has right now, is dealing with budget issues in the next couple months and making sure that we expend this money wisely, because it's a real opportunity we can't let slip through our fingers. Jim, appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us, introducing our local area and our community and our viewership to you and your leadership over at the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, and giving us some insight into the future that will be very interesting and critical in the next several months and several years for our business community. Well, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate that you have the show, that you're trying to improve the discourse locally and, in our communities across the state and Southeast Michigan. It's really important, and you're doing a great job making sure these issues come to the forefront. So thanks for what you do.
Appreciate your time. Thank you very much for your kind words as well. We've been joined by Jim Holcomb, President and CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. You can keep up to date on everything that they're doing, as well as some more information on the status of our business community all across the state of Michigan by visiting the Chamber's website at michamber.com. We're going to take a break. You're listening to your radio homes for the Megacast, 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, West Bloomfield, Keego Harbor, Sylvan Lake, and 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills across the board on our family of stations. We'll take a break, and on the other side, we'll kick off the second hour of the program with the Oakland Literacy Council's Executive Director, Lisa Machesky. She'll join us next. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
Can I ask you a question?
Why did you get your kids vaccinated?
It was hard for them to social distance, to be isolated from their friends.
I want them to get back to school and sports games. So as a pediatrician, I recommend the vaccine to everyone I know.
The boys lost a former teammate and classmate who was only 20 years old. It's been a devastating year.
We want to get back to normalcy. Our daughter is really looking forward to being with her friends, being a kid.
It's the Great Lakes water. And so what people do ends up in our waterways.
Flushable wipes are just evil. They should be thrown away. They're impossible to destroy, and they can cause significant problems.
One of the main things when you're cooking is to not dump fats, oils, and greases down your drains.
They stick to the sides of pipes. They stick to everything they come in contact with. Don't put it down the sink.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
How can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources. Call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
We may come from different organizations,
but we work together to protect the Huron River for everyone.
Neighborhood storm drains carry water directly to local creeks and streams. No filters, no treatment.
Storm drains also help reduce street flooding when it rains.
So clearing storm drains and the areas nearby of trash and leaves helps keep them for rain only.
It is easy to do your part by adopting a storm drain.
Find a storm drain, check it, and clear it every month.
So keep storm drains for rain only.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
If you are struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to a $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit or call toll-free at 833-511-0311.
A public service announcement from 89.3 Lakes FM.
We as Michiganders feel connected to this resource in a way that I think is really powerful.
Conservation starts with a caring, committed community.
For me, it's peaceful to have a relationship with the river.
Every single one of us has a role to make sure that those waterways stay safe and healthy, being careful about what goes down the storm drain.
Just even eliminating some of your single-use plastic makes a difference.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe. You can learn more about our show, including everywhere we broadcast live and live to tape, and find us on demand at civiccentertv.com/Megacast. Again, it's civiccentertv.com/megacast with links to all of our partnering stations so you can learn more about everything that they do in the other 22 hours of the day that they're not joining us, and find all of our interviews and each full episode on demand. We're joined now by the Executive Director of the Oakland Literacy Council, which for 37 years has enabled our students to achieve literacy goals through partnership with trained tutors. And their Executive Director, Lisa Machesky, joins us now on the Megacast. Lisa, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Tyler. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Appreciate having you on as well. So tell us a little bit about the Oakland Literacy Council. Obviously, as I said, it's been in operations for almost 40 years at this point. Tell us what the goals of your organization is and how it helps to support literacy in our communities.
Well, I love to be around this organization that has this 40 years of history and making sure that people have the basic skills they need to survive and thrive in our community. We focus on reading, English language, math, and digital literacy to make sure that people all have the foundational skills they need to be successful in the workplace, to be successful as parents, and to be successful just as a member of our community.
We're joined by Lisa Machesky, the Executive Director of the Oakland Literacy Council on the Megacast. And so some of the work that you do, this 501c3 nonprofit organization, is working with trained volunteer tutors that are helping to help individual students reach those literacy goals. Where does that process usually start in not only finding those connections and helping to build those relationships that are so critical in advancing these kids' literacy, but also getting the kids into this program that may have some issues with their literacy or their reading comprehension?
Well, Tyler, one of the first things to know is that we don't deal with kids. Okay. We deal with adults. We work with those that are 18 years or older, and we pair them with volunteer tutors. So it really is a peer relationship where people can build on those individual goals. Some of our learners have English as not their first language, and they have learned they are here and they need to have those English skills. But some of our learners are also those that have experienced some problems with the traditional school system. So we really believe that one-on-one relationship is so important. And relationships are really at the foundation of all that we do. We want to make sure that people have the space to be successful, to be able to try new things. It's hard as an adult to try new things when you might fail a little bit. But we know that failure is just a first step towards making sure that you meet your goals. We have to try and experiment to learn something new. Our students come to us with a wide variety of literacy goals. Some are very simple. A student might want to be able to talk to their child's teacher and be able to communicate more successfully in this new land for themselves. Others have literacy goals around making sure that they get that GED or making sure that they get into the training program that they might want. Others need to learn English in order to gain citizenship here in this country.
Yeah, and what's great about your programs, too, is even though your organization is the Oakland Literacy Council, it's not just English language learning, or it's not just reading comprehension that is the focus of these programs. Your tutors also are helping in writing and in math skills as well for people all across the board that may have a variety of different factors as to why they need some help in these areas. And no matter where they're going in life, no matter where they're at in life, those are such critical skills. So where does this program consist of? How are people coming to your organization for this assistance, and how does that matchmaking sort of go to get them with a tutor that can best help them with their needs?
Well, thank you for mentioning math. It's one of our newest programming offerings, and we know that the need for basic math instruction is so much more than even basic English instruction. So we're really excited about getting the word out around now we offer math, because it's a lot easier to say I struggle with math, because for some reason that's a socially acceptable thing to say, and it's not as socially acceptable to say I struggle with reading. But students come to us from a wide variety of ways. Word of mouth is always our biggest reason why people come to us. They could go to our website and register to go to www.oaklandliteracy.com and become a student. Or if they're interested in tutoring, they could just go to that same website and say become a tutor. And then you just put in some of the basic information. We'll call we'll call you back or text you back or email you back, whatever your preference, and start the process.
We're joined by Lisa Machesky, the Executive Director of the Oakland Literacy Council, joining us on the Megacast. And so, as we've mentioned, the tutors that are helping these individuals with their reading, with their writing, with their math skills, or a combination of all of them, they're trained volunteers. What goes into that training to prepare these individuals that are going in for the right reasons, for the right motivations? They want to help people. They have their own skills and abilities in these certain areas, and are using that to assist people that need some help. What sort of training does go into their volunteerism with the Oakland Literacy Council, so that they're not only utilizing their skills best, but they're doing so in a way that is most productive to help these individuals that are seeking the services of your organization?
Well, our tutoring has changed a little bit in the past couple of years. Most of our tutoring is now done virtually, so people have to be able to handle a virtual environment, and our training is all done exclusively on a virtual environment. We now require introduction training. It's a 2-hour training where we really talk about the diverse needs of all our tutors, and all tutors are required to go through that beginning training session. And then after that, you get to choose what specialty you're interested in. Are you interested in teaching an ESL learner? Are you interested in teaching an adult basic student around basic reading and writing? Or are you interested in tutoring that math? And we provide more in-depth experiences for you to do that piece too. So there's a 2-part training that's required. We also offer just basic information sessions periodically. If you go to our website, you'll be able to see all the different times that ability to just find out about us. Talk to our tutor coordinator, Lori Weeks, and she'll talk about what the training looks like. We do expect all our tutors to meet at least once a week with their learner. Vacations are okay. And they work with them on whatever the individual needs as far as their individual learning goal. This education is also supported with online learning. Tutors really have a lot of tools at hand to make sure that reading goes, or that successful tutoring relationship and learning happens. Also, our learners are also able to be involved in conversation groups or other small group learning. So we really have 3 ways of learning, but really the fundamental piece of it is that one-on-one relationship.
We're joined by Lisa Machesky, Executive Director of the Oakland Literacy Council. You can learn more information by visiting oaklandliteracy.com. That's oaklandliteracy.com, where you can learn about becoming a student, becoming a mentor, participate in their news and events, find tools for tutors as well, and more information. Again, oaklandliteracy.com. And so, are there any requirements for tutors as they're oncoming and they're volunteering with their organization? What does your organization look for in a tutor, and what are some of the requirements that they need to cover in order to participate in some of these programs as a volunteer tutor?
Well, first of all, enthusiasm and want to help are the most important requirements for all of our tutors. And but you don't need a higher education. You don't need to be trained as a tutor, although many of them are involved in that, and they have that experience. You don't need to have that experience. You just have to have a desire to help, some ability to organize things, make sure you set up meetings. You have to do some of your own lesson plans. It's really, it is an intensive experience, but the rewards are so great because it really allows you to make a difference in somebody's life at a very fundamental level. Because once you gain some of these skills, you can really participate in our society at a much deeper level.
We're joined by Lisa Machesky, the Executive Director of the Oakland Literacy Council, on the Megacast. Again, you can learn more information about the organization by visiting oaklandliteracy.com. And so on your website, you have a link to meet the 35 faces of literacy. So many success stories from people that have engaged in your program and have built so many of those skills that they've sought to build. Can you give us an example of a couple of success stories of people that have engaged in Oakland Literacy Council programming and come out on the other side with those skills that they wanted to obtain, and how it's helped improve their life?
One of the stories that we like to tell this past year, or one of our most recent graduates, is he has opened his own sushi restaurant on Lake Orion. And one of his things that he worked on with his tutor was all the regulations and things that you needed to open a business, especially a food business. So he worked with his tutor to understand what the leasing requirements were, all these different things. So he's a business owner now because our help. And then we also, last week, we just had word that one of our students became citizens. And I also love to tell the story of this individual who decided she was now had custody of her grandchildren and wanted to be that good model. As they were learning online, she was learning online too. She wanted to make sure that she was going to get that GED that she had long promised herself. And by having those kids in the room, she wanted to be that good role model. She's really making some great progress.
We're joined by Lisa Machesky, the Executive Director of the Oakland Literacy Council, joining us on the Megacast. You can learn more information about the organization as well as how you can participate, either as a student if you need some of their assistances, or as a tutor, how you can become a tutor and find some tools to help you with tutoring as well by visiting oaklandliteracy.com. Lisa, just a few more minutes with you before we'll say goodbye today. Any other information that we haven't discussed on the Oakland Literacy Council, on people's participation, on your programs and different events that you'd like to discuss, or anything else that we should be considering at this moment in time as we're trying to help ourselves and help our neighbors improve in some of these basic skills that are so critical to everyday life, but in some ways, in a number of different ways, can either fall to the wayside or be a struggle for people that are new to our area, to our country, to the state of Michigan.
Wonderful. Well, I really like to highlight some of our new programming, so people who have some familiarity with us might not know about that we are now offering math, and we are really focusing on making sure that people have the skills to get into training programs or OCC. We want to make sure that people have those basic math skills, especially those who have had online learning for the past couple of years. Math is one of those difficult things around that, and we are always looking for more tutors for that aspect. But it's really some basic math that you need those practical skills, and that's what all our tutors focus on, making sure that they're focusing on practical skills. We're not just drilling multiplication tables and things like that. We're really taking examples like, if you're interested in construction, how do you figure out how much paint you might need to paint a room, and thinking about surface areas and things like that. And we're also doing a lot of programming around digital literacy. We really have found, especially with the pandemic, that digital skills are so important. You can't make doctor's appointments without them. You can't make sure that you're ordering groceries. Those digital skills have really become a cornerstone and foundational basic skill. And we're working with that. We have a curriculum around digital literacy. We also make sure that we help people get into internet access and have devices if needed. So if you want to be a participant in our programs, don't worry that you don't have the computers or anything like that. We make sure that we walk you through and we'll get you all the tools that you need.
You can learn more information by visiting the website at oaklandliteracy.com or by visiting sharedetroit.org and searching Oakland Literacy Council. And while you're over there, explore there are other 267 at this time charities and nonprofits in the Metro Detroit area that they are supporting and sharing information about. Lisa, thank you very much for joining us.
Share Detroit! They've been great partners.
They are great. We appreciate your time, Lisa. Thank you for being with us. We're going to take a break here on the Megacast. Again, you can learn more information on their website, oaklandliteracy.com. That's oaklandliteracy.com to learn more about their programs and become a tutor if you'd like to help people improve their literacy, improve their reading, writing, math skills, and more. Again, oaklandliteracy.com. We're going to take a break. On the other side, we'll head to downtown Plymouth and be joined by Rachel Britz of Vitrine on Main, Vitrine Gifts, located in Plymouth. And then at 11:30, a very special presentation from Dr. Betty Chu from Henry Ford Health System, who is their Associate Chief Clinical Officer and Chief Quality of the Chief Quality Office for Henry Ford Health System. She'll do a presentation on where we're at in the COVID-19 pandemic as we partner with the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce to help give you an extensive update as we cap off today's edition of the Megacast. That's coming up next. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
Did you know that nearly 3.31 million Americans don't get their annual checkup? Going to the doctor regularly is extremely important and is a crucial factor in maintaining good health. Make sure you are visiting your local doctor often and telling them about any health concerns you have. For more information, contact your local healthcare provider. This message is brought to you by WBHS Digital Media Arts Program and 89.3 Lakes FM.
Achoo! Joining us now is Rachel Britz, the store manager at Vitrine Gallery and Gifts of Plymouth, with us again on the Megacast. Rachel, thank you for being with us.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Appreciate having you on. So can you tell us a little bit about Vitrine in Plymouth? What do you have to offer for customers? And I know that your original location is also in Berkeley.
Yes. So basically, I have a little bit of our taste of everything behind me right now. Okay. We're called a lifestyle store. We've kind of transitioned into that the past year. We have a lot of home goods, gifts, art. We have fair trade, fashion, accessories, just kind of everything for everyone. And so right now, what are some of the items that are commonly kind of flying off the shelves that people are looking for more commonly than others when they come into your store? Definitely. So we have a couple different items that come to mind. We have our Rose and Perry candles that are 100% coconut wax. So when you light them, you're actually able to put them in your body, in your bath, cuticle oil, because it just basically melts and then you can use the oil. It's really awesome. And those are hand poured in Detroit. And we also have this really cool item. It's called Mixology. And basically, it's a cocktail infusion kit. So you get to make your own cocktails. You put your choice of spirit in the cocktail jar, and then you put that in the fridge for 3 days, and then you pour it over maybe a juice, a tonic, and you can make 8 to 16 cocktails, infuse it a couple times as well.
We're joined by Rachel Britz, the store manager of Vitrine Gallery and Gifts of Plymouth, joining us on the Megacast. Another unique feature of Vitrine in Plymouth is your purpose patio. Can you tell us a little bit about that and kind of the origins of this element of your store?
So I guess the origins of our purpose patio is fair trade. We got into fair trade a few years ago and we just fell in love with it. We are doing the purpose patio to help many different people and areas. So we're going to have small businesses out there, nonprofits. We're going to have fair trade items, different shows, benefits, just everything to help locally and just small people. And so we're just really excited to have that opportunity to help the community and small profits and nonprofits and everything.
So you mentioned several times so far that you carry items that are fair trade. Can you explain to us what that means and define fair trade?
Yes. So fair trade, in the gist of it, is that we're trading our products and money fairly. We're giving them fair wages. We're giving them safe working conditions, protecting their children. We're giving them safety. I mean, there's so many things. It's really cool to look into and to find that little fair trade sticker on a lot of the items that you find everywhere, like coffee, and just, it's really cool to dive deep into that and to support fair trade in every way. But we sponsor 10 kids in Haiti, and we add 2 on each year, and we do that through World Vision. So we really try to stick with fair trade and helping third world countries.
And so this is the second location of Vitrine Gallery, and your emphasis on fair trade is obviously for great moral reasons, but on a business front, I would imagine it would be so much easier for most businesses, whether they are big box retail or whether they are small businesses and independently owned like Vitrine Gallery, to not go that route. What is the motivation for your business to have such an emphasis on fair trade, making sure that those that are producing the products, whether they be the point of origin for the product or those that are physically creating these products, are being treated fairly and are being compensated properly, when so many other businesses may see that and decide to put that to the side in favor of profit?
Yeah, I guess, again, like the key thing is the profit. You aren't going to make as much profit with it, and that's not our goal here. We really are about the people, the community, and of course we do want to make some profits. We're not a nonprofit, but we like to support nonprofits. And I guess we we just fell in love with fair trade, and we watched the videos of the makers making the items, and you see their living conditions, you see their stories. It's really humbling and beautiful to see that. And we really wanted to support and help them in any way we can. And we try to find many ways to help and support. We do a charity garage sale event every year, and that goes towards helping us to be able to sponsor the kids in Haiti and give them extra things as well. So just super important to be the change and stick with fair trade.
So as we talked about earlier, your Purpose Patio, part of that effort is hosting nonprofits and charities with the purpose of doing good rent-free on your store's deck. If there are charities and nonprofits in the local area that would like to take part in that, how can they best go about that, and what sort of information do they need to provide to your business?
Yeah. There's so many ways to contact us. We have Instagram, Facebook, which is both Shop at Vitrine. We have Vitrine on Main. Either way, I will get it. We have on our website, which is also shopatvitrine.com. We have a phone number, an email. You can contact us in any different way, and we will get back to you in the same manner. But it is rent-free. We are going to be lining up different events throughout the year, probably starting when it gets a little warmer outside, just because it's a little cold right now and icy. So yeah, once we get a lineup, then we will go about that and have people ready to come out here and do fun little events.
We're joined by Rachel Britz, the store manager of Vitrine Gallery and Gifts of Plymouth, joining us on the Megacast. So as I mentioned, you're store manager of Vitrine Gallery and Gifts of Plymouth. Are those two separate businesses, or are those together?
Is the Vitrine and Vitrine on Main?
The Vitrine Gallery and Gifts of Plymouth.
So it's actually Vitrine on Main. Okay. We scratched the Gallery and Gifts about a few months ago, actually, just because through the pandemic, we kind of became this lifestyle store, and it was really cool and changing, and like a butterfly, we have become into our own selves.
And so how did the pandemic, tell us a little bit about that story. How did the pandemic inform the changes that your business did undergo over the last several months? And how has it also helped to inform where you want to go in the future with Vitrine on Main?
It was really beautiful to see. We had so many loyal customers just around the neighborhood as well, just support us in any way they could. Even if they didn't need something, they wanted to support us and keep us around. And at first it was, scary, because we were like, oh gosh, like, what are we gonna do? And we honed in on our website. We made it available to curbside pickup for us to go and drop off door to door. And it was just really beautiful to see so many people supporting us and really see the importance of small business. I think it was a huge thing for every small business, and for everyone to be like, wow, like, they're really important. And it was just really cool to see.
We're joined by Rachel Britz, the store manager at Vitrine on Main, joining us on the Megacast. Rachel, just a few more minutes. Before we let you go, I want to ask, where is your business located if people are interested in shopping? And of course, if there's anything else that would be important or be interesting for our audience to know about Vitrine on Main at this time.
Yeah, so we are located at 772 South Main Street. We are across from the Goodyear Tire. And there's so much for everyone. You can't come in here and not find something for someone. It's really cool the vibes, and just being in here is really fun. And people come in here and they're like, this is my happy place. And, it's like retail therapy, and it's just really cool to have a community. And it's not just selling products, it's really becoming a family.
Rachel, thank you very much for joining us and telling us more about Vitrine on Main.
Yes, thank you.
Did you know that nearly 3.31 million Americans don't get their annual checkup? Going to the doctor regularly is extremely important and is a crucial factor in maintaining good health. Make sure you are visiting your local doctor often and telling them about any health concerns you have. For more information, contact your local healthcare provider. This message is brought to you by WBHS Digital Media Arts Program and 89.3 Lakes FM.
People are getting out to walk and bike in higher numbers. More vulnerable road users and higher speed traffic can be a dangerous combination. Crash severity has increased, so if you're driving, be sure to slow down and look for people. There's no need to speed. If you're biking, ride with traffic. If you're walking, avoid stepping into the road if possible. If you have to walk in the street, walk facing traffic. Learn more at walkbikedrivesafe.org.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
How can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources. Call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
Parents do a lot of worrying. Get your kids caught up on childhood vaccines to protect them from these 14 preventable diseases, and you'll have 14 fewer things to worry about. Vaccines are safe and effective and save lives. So let's get caught up on vaccines and worry about something else. Get the facts at ivaccinate.org.
We may come from different organizations,
but we work together to protect the Huron River for everyone.
Most of the pollution that goes into our rivers is carried by rainwater that flows off of roads, parking lots, and rooftops.
The leaves and bark of a single tree can retain a surprising amount of rainwater. Depending on its size and species, it could be 100 gallons or more.
It is estimated that an urban forest can reduce annual runoff by up to 7%.
Here's one thing that we know can help keep our water clean.
Plant a tree.
Plant a tree.
Plant a tree.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
One of the things you can look for in your friends is a change in behavior. These can be big changes, they can be small changes in mood, physical appearance. They may be sleeping less or sleeping more, drinking more, or their eating patterns may be different. One big change that can be pretty obvious is change in motivation. Do they no longer want to play basketball? Do they no longer want to play video games? Now that we're spending more time online and in virtual settings, it's really important to pay attention to the language that your friend is using and the words they're using to communicate.
So when we text our friends, are they taking longer amounts of time to respond? Are they not responding at all? You don't have to be an expert to try to recognize these signs. The second that you feel it in your gut and that you're concerned, that's the second to have the conversation and open the door to what might be going on.
Whatever gets you talking.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe. You can learn more information about our show, including all of our partners, and find us on demand by visiting civiccentertv.com/Megacast. Now we have in our final segment of today's edition of the Megacast a special presentation from Dr. Betty Chu, Associate Chief Clinical Officer at Henry Ford Health System, in partnership with the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce, to provide an update on where we're at in the COVID-19 pandemic. As of Wednesday, Michigan reported 27,423 new cases, or an average of 13,712 for each of the past 2 days. Now, numbers and these trends starting to trend back down, but for a while now, especially since the onset of the Omicron variant here in the local area and across the state of Michigan, we have seen a surge of COVID-19 cases that has affected how we've dealt with this pandemic across the board, including and especially in our health systems. We'll bring in Dr. Betty Chu, now the Associate Chief Clinical Officer of Henry Ford Health System. Dr. Chu, thank you for being with us.
Great. Thanks, Tyler. Really appreciate you having me on today. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you just well. So we understand you have a presentation for us with information on COVID-19 and where we're at in this. You may start whenever you would like.
Sure. Yeah, I'm going to share some verbal comments primarily. I've got some prepared comments just to kind of tell folks how we're doing as a health system, but also just to, of course, encourage folks on some of the key points that people are hearing out in the media. And then, Tyler, I'm happy to take questions from you, from the audience, whatever. I know we've got a relatively brief period of time together, but let me just open with a couple of general comments, okay?
Okay.
All right. Well, I think, as you mentioned, we continue to see some really positive signs that Omicron surge is slowing. Our hospitalizations as a health system, we serve 4 counties, have been declining since last week, and our number of infections are down slightly. For Oakland County in particular, where I know a lot of your listeners are from, there's been also a decrease in the death rate as well as a decrease in the number of positive tests. I think that's certainly reflected by people, of course, seeing that in their own lives with their kids in their schools and other things like that. These hopeful signs are definitely making us more optimistic that we've seen the worst of the Omicron surge. I don't think any of us expected to have sort of this double force of Delta and Omicron running into each other and leading to a pretty challenging December and January. That isn't to say that Omicron isn't around still, that it's still not a threat in the community, because it is. And so we really would encourage people to not let their guard down, to continue to do the things that they need to do to help prevent infection. The pandemic, unfortunately, isn't over yet. We're not done with it yet, and it's not done with us yet. This also means, of course, please wear a mask in public, regardless of your vaccination status, in particular in indoor spaces. And we've noticed that folks are washing their hands less. I've noticed that when I went to the restaurant the other day. I think washing your hands, of course, basic hand hygiene is really important. And of course, the biggest thing that we can do to protect from infection is getting that vaccination, and also making sure that you're up to date on vaccination. So I'll make a few comments about vaccination, because I know there's a lot of questions that I get as a physician when I'm seeing patients in my office around vaccination rates. Because our vaccination rates are still relatively low, we're still going to continue, of course, to see infections. There's, of course, a lot of natural immunity that also occurs as well, but vaccinations are still the best thing that offer us protection from dying. And that's really the focus, is that vaccine is going to help prevent the mortality or the death that we have been seeing so much of in the past couple of years. Couple of things that, of course, have come up recently is, what do we mean by fully vaccinated? Get a lot of questions about that in my office. The CDC, of course, is using the language now up to date versus fully vaccinated. This is a very common way that we talk about vaccines. My kids have had their measles, mumps, and rubella, and they're up to date. I've gotten my flu series this year, and I'm up to date. And so as we start to shift the language for the COVID vaccines to using this up-to-date strategy, what that will tell you, too, is, so if I've had 2 shots of the COVID vaccine, but my last dose was a year ago, then I'm not up to date. I need to get a booster, because what's recommended by the CDC is, for somebody who's my age, I should have a booster, and that would make me up to date. And that's going to help protect you, give you the most level of protection from infection. It was clear, based on more recent studies, that getting that booster, getting up to date, is going to help protect from the variants and from Omicron and specifically. So the CDC, of course, is advising that, as well as Henry Ford Health System. We're strongly advising that people stay up to date. We do that because we have recognized through our own internal data that more than 90% of people being hospitalized for COVID have not received that are vaccinated, have not received their 3rd dose of vaccine. So while you are hearing there's an increase in folks that are being hospitalized that are vaccinated, many of these folks are not up to date currently on their vaccination. That is, they haven't received that booster dose. And of course, we're still seeing the preponderance, or largest percentage of people that are hospitalized, and the largest percentage of people that are dying in the hospitals are the unvaccinated. Couple of things to share again from a data perspective. The 4 counties where Henry Ford has hospitals, Jackson, Macomb, Oakland, and Wayne, only about 55% of those eligible to be vaccinated have had their first 2 doses, and only 45% of people are up to date on their vaccines, which means they've gotten their booster. Again, if you know, as you probably know, the CDC also recommended boosters for teenagers aged 12 to 15. I immediately went out and got my 14-year-old his booster dose. So my whole family has received their boosters. Unfortunately, the vaccination rate for people in Michigan that are under the age of 20 still remains low. So again, we want to encourage folks to be up to date, and especially those kids, those children that are between the ages of 5 to 11. The state recently shared data that by mid-November, only about 2,000 doses of vaccine have been given for children ages 5 to 11. So there's definitely a significant opportunity to help protect those kids, but also to help prevent them from spreading COVID to the rest of us, especially because they're in such close proximity in their schools. And then I'll just make 2 other comments about testing and about treatment. And then again, I'm happy to take some questions, Tyler, with our remaining time. There's been a lot of talk about testing. The governor and the federal government has been focused a lot on getting out COVID tests to folks. In every home in the United States can order 4, I believe, at-home COVID test kits through covidtest.gov. And these tests are free. Before using the COVID test at home, I just want to share a few do's and don'ts for users so that they can get a better sense of what we'd recommend. First, if you get a positive test, believe it. You are far more likely to get a false negative than a false positive. And you don't need to get a repeat test. So if you're at home, you're symptomatic, you take a home rapid test, and it says that you're positive, believe it, and do your isolation. You don't need to run to the doctor and get a PCR test because you have COVID. So it's very much sensitive for detecting positive COVID cases, those rapid tests. If you get a negative test, don't consider it a free pass. We would strongly suggest if you've been exposed, you're known exposed, close exposure, or you're feeling symptomatic, please act as if you have COVID until you're outside the incubation period. And the best time to test for COVID is within 48 hours of developing symptoms. During that time, please isolate from others until you have a negative test. And then finally, if you've been exposed to someone with COVID and aren't feeling symptoms, the best time to test is 3 to 5 days after exposure. So we just wanted to provide some guidance. We are getting a lot of demand for testing. We would really encourage folks, if you're not symptomatic and you need a test, there's multiple resources available online to find out where you can get a COVID test. And a rapid test, of course, are available at pharmacies. Please don't come to the emergency department if you're not symptomatic to look for a COVID test. We really want to prioritize using our emergency departments for patients who are sick so that we can care for those patients as they come into the facilities. So with that, Tyler, again, happy to answer any questions and really appreciate the time to speak to your audience today.
Yeah, and thank you as well for your presentation, giving us an update on so many details that are constantly changing and are different with this variant that we have going around currently, the Omicron variant, being that it is so much more virulent than the Delta variant, but even so isn't showing necessarily as severe of outcomes as often as the Delta variant had been previously and continues to. We're joined by Dr. Betty Chu, the Associate Chief Clinical Officer at Henry Ford Health System, on this special COVID-19 update segment of the Megacast in partnership with the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce. And so, Dr. Chu, one of the most important things that we've been hearing continue to be preached by our health officials and be encouraged by people across the board in public health, in government, in business, in education, and beyond, is that need for updating your vaccinations, for getting your booster shots, or for getting vaccinated. And you mentioned that there's this change in terminology from fully vaccinated to up to date. For those that have been previously fully vaccinated, they had both of their shots of Pfizer or Moderna, their single shot of Johnson & Johnson, and they're months down the road and they haven't received their booster yet. What are there differences in outcomes that we've seen in those breakthrough cases for people that have previously been vaccinated but have some of that waning immunity versus those that have been boosted since then? And what are some of those key differences in the outcomes of those patients or the cases of those patients should they end up being hospitalized for COVID-19, or even if they're not hospitalized, if there is one?
Yeah, Tyler, sorry, I want to make sure I understood your question. It sounds to me like you're asking if you've been vaccinated and you're fully vaccinated, but you're not up to date, versus if you're up to date, which means you've gotten your booster, is there any difference in protection between those two groups of folks? And I think we don't have enough data to suggest that there's what we do have data to suggest is that that group that has been up to date, that has booster, has more protection from Omicron. And so, and we know that, again, based on our internal data of folks that are hospitalized, as I mentioned before, of the patients that are in our hospitals that are vaccinated, the majority of them are not what we call up to date on their vaccinations. And, simply it could have been a timing thing for folks. They wanted to get their booster. They haven't gotten their booster yet. They're not up to date. But we certainly know that, especially as the virus evolves and creates more variants, that it's important for us to stay up to date on our boosters. As you may have heard, there's some testing that's being done on an Omicron specific booster, and we won't know if that's going to be effective or not, and we don't know if there isn't going to be a new variant that's going to be coming in the future that the vaccine will need to be pivoted or shifted to. There is some cross protection, of course, between the vaccines towards the variants because of the way that the vaccinations work.
And so we've heard a lot as well, especially in arguments from people that are refusing to be vaccinated or are hesitant to be vaccinated and may have had COVID previously, that they don't want to get vaccinated or they don't feel the need to get vaccinated because they've had COVID and they believe that they have protection from quote unquote natural immunity. There are some indications that natural immunity can provide some sort of help as it does with other viruses, but not nearly as much protection as these vaccines and as the booster shots do. What are some of those key differences between or better yet, what protections can or does natural immunity provide to people from COVID-19, especially these variants, particularly the more severe, with more severe outcomes in Delta and with and the one that's more virulent in Omicron, versus those that have either natural immunity and vaccination or vaccination at this time?
Yeah, so a couple things I'll say is that the name of the game with, of course, vaccination or natural immunity is, do you make antibodies? And those antibodies are, of course, what protect us from future infection and protect us from disease. We definitely know, based on science and all the millions of people that have gotten infected and the millions of people that have gotten the vaccine, that folks that get the vaccine have a much more robust antibody production than folks that have natural immunity. And so while you do confer some protection with natural immunity, you're going to get much more antibodies production and much more protection with the vaccination. And part of why we have to get the boosters is because we know that even with the vaccine, your antibody production wanes over time. It decreases over time, so you don't have as much protection. And that's the intent of getting the booster. It curtails more quickly after natural immunity. So that antibody protection curtails much more quickly after natural immunity. It's rare often that we don't need to have boosters or additional doses. So if we think about the flu vaccine, right, we recommend the flu vaccine on an annual basis because those antibodies that are produced, one, are for specific variants of the flu, but also our antibody protection goes away over time with these vaccinations. This whole discussion, I think, is that there was a lot of misinformation around that it changes your DNA or that it alters your cell function. The vaccines simply cause your own body to produce antibodies, to create antibodies, which is why boosters and being up to date are necessary in order for us to maintain that level of protection, because there's not any permanent change resulting from the vaccine.
And again, we're joined by Dr. Betty Chu, the Associate Chief Clinical Officer at Henry Ford Health System, joining us on the Megacast in partnership with the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce to provide you with an update on where we're at with the COVID-19 pandemic, with the Omicron variant continuing to spread here locally in Oakland County, where we originate our broadcast, as well as throughout the state of Michigan and around the world. Dr. Chu, a couple of key points you also touched on were testing and masking. And so previously on in the pandemic, The encouragement was to wear any mask that you could possibly get that was going to be covering your face and was going to be preventing a lot of the particulate matter from getting out into the air and spreading, of course, COVID-19 as it spreads airborne. We've heard more over time, more recently, especially with the more virulent Omicron variant being out in our community, encouragement to switch to either KN95 or N95 masks if possible, as opposed to, but not in absence of necessarily cloth masks or surgical masks because of how easily spread the Omicron variant is. At this time, what is your recommendation? What is the medical community's recommendation on which masks are best for people to be wearing in order to prevent the spread of the Omicron variant? And do those other masks, if someone doesn't have access to KN95 or doesn't have access to N95 masks, would a surgical mask or a cloth mask still be effective in giving them some protection against Omicron's spread?
Yeah, a couple things that I would say is the mask primarily provides what's called source control, which means that if I'm sick and I have COVID and I put a mask on, it helps protect you, Tyler, if you're standing in a room with me, from decreasing the amount of COVID that I spread to you. If you're sick, then as you know, the masks aren't perfect. They're not a perfect seal. So the more of a seal that you can get, of course, with the mask, the more it's going to protect me from Tyler, who's sick, standing in the room with me. So number one, wearing a mask overall is going to offer you some protection, but it's also going to protect people around you. So part of wearing a mask is about helping reduce the spread if you are potentially an asymptomatic spreader or somebody who's symptomatic. To answer your question directly, first of all, any mask, of course, if to your point, if some people can't get a hold of an N95 or a K95, wearing a mask, I think, is probably the biggest thing I would share with folks, irrespective of whether it's cloth or not. The updated recommendations, though, are reflecting the fact that Omicron is so much more transmissible than Delta. It's multiple times fold more transmissible than Delta. As we know, we've seen how quickly it spread throughout the country. And that really speaks to the fact that wearing a mask that has a better seal is more effective to help you from getting the virus.
And then what about in situations where you are in a small gathering or a moderate gathering with people that you know are vaccinated like you are, or have the vaccine and have received the booster as well? Should we be considering that the Omicron variant, like the Delta variant and previous variants before, has shown breakthrough cases as well? Should we be masking in those situations also, or is there enough of that protection from our vaccinations to prevent severe outcomes or prevent spread of COVID-19 between those that may already be vaccinated and or boosted against COVID-19 if they're interacting with one another?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I get asked that question a lot. As people, I'm going to go to a family event, and I know everybody there has been vaccinated and boosted, and I trust them to tell me if they're symptomatic, they're coughing or sneezing or having some symptoms. Do we really need to wear a mask? And I would say if your activity is low risk, that to me is a low risk activity. Everybody's vaccinated and boosted. You know the people, and they're going to tell you if they're sick or not. So the likelihood of you having somebody in the room who puts you all at risk by not telling you that they have COVID when you guys don't have masks on, I would say it's probably relatively safe in that low risk activity. So we're at the point in the, in the process of COVID where we're trying to have to figure out personally, from a personal and from my family standpoint, what activities am I going to partake in that are high risk or low risk activities? And some of that's also based on my own personal protection, but some of that's based on the environment that I'm in. If I'm in a group of individuals that I don't know well, so if I go to a large indoor meeting today and I'm around a bunch of people that I don't know well, then I would definitely feel more comfortable putting a mask on, even though I've been fully vaccinated, that I've been up to date that I'm up to date with my booster, because I don't know the environment. That's part of why we all have to mask on airplanes right now, or we walking through the airport, is we just don't simply know who the folks are that are walking around us. And it's not that we don't necessarily trust our fellow citizens, but I think we can all appreciate that when we're in the airport at Detroit Metro, we just don't know who's vaccinated and not vaccinated. And it's much safer for all of us if everybody is wearing masks. And the same is true in healthcare settings. That's why we require a mask in healthcare settings. And many of our patients, as you probably realize, are sick or have comorbidities, and for them to be around somebody who either knows or doesn't know that they have COVID would put them at a lot of risk. So that's why we still require masks in our healthcare settings.
We're joined by Dr. Betty Chu, the Associate Chief Clinical Officer with Henry Ford Health System, in partnership with the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce for the special segment of the Megacast, providing an extensive update on COVID-19, where we stand in this pandemic at this present time with the Omicron variant, Delta variant, and future variants to pop up in our communities and in the state of Michigan as well. And so, Dr. Chu, so critical to preventing the spread of COVID-19, you touched on this in your presentation as well, is testing, especially with a more virulent strain of COVID-19, such as the Omicron variant, being out in our communities. And that's part of the reason why there's been such an effort across the board from the federal, state, and local level to encourage more testing. Of course, the federal test distribution program as well. But much like earlier on in the pandemic, where we had varying time periods being recommended by health officials on when to get tested, how to get tested, and at this moment in time, especially with the Omicron variant in particular, and the way that that's spreading in our communities, if someone is suspicious that they may have COVID-19, obviously they should get tested. But if someone has been exposed potentially to someone with COVID-19 or somebody that they know they were around that may have been around someone else that was COVID-19 positive, what is that timetable that's recommended or that's most proficient in them getting tested and being in a position to get the most accurate result possible?
Yeah, the time frame would be 3 to 5 days from exposure, to answer your question directly. And we certainly encourage people, if you've had a known exposure, a close proximity known exposure, that that you isolate until you get that test back, until you get some confirmation. Certainly, if you're symptomatic and even if your test is negative, because of, again, the false negativity that especially those rapid tests can have, we would still recommend that you isolate, because no test is perfect, and you could certainly have COVID. It would also help if you did a home test, a rapid test, and you tested negative, but you're still symptomatic. That's a circumstance where getting a PCR test might be useful, because it is a more sensitive test.
And then on the other side of things, if you do test positive and you are quarantining and you are staying distant from others to prevent the spread of COVID-19, at some point you are ready to go back into the world, into your regular life. And as you're preparing to do that, what sort of testing should be undergone as you're coming out from behind your positive COVID-19 test or your experience dealing with COVID-19? When should people be getting tested again to see if they are still COVID-19 positive before they're returning to regular life out in the public, at work, at schools, and so on?
Yeah, Tyler, it's a really good question, and the answer might surprise you, because there's been a lot of discussion about, is it 5 or 7 or 10 days that you're supposed to stay home and wear a mask and stay isolated if you're COVID positive, and should you get a test when you leave, and if you're not negative, and stay home for longer even though you feel totally fine. As you probably know, COVID tests can be positive for quite some time. I mean, weeks sometimes after you've had COVID. And so for many employers as well as our own, if we have an employee who feels completely fine, who is COVID positive, who's been home for the 7 days, which is our policy, or again, 5 days. I know that some policies for other companies, we have them return to work and wear a mask. And of course, we have a mask policy at work, but we'd ask them to wear a mask. The testing is not as useful anymore. So we don't require testing for employees to come back to work if they are asymptomatic. We have what's called the symptom-based strategy. But that's really no different than any other cold or flu, right? So we're getting to the point where eventually COVID's going to be an endemic. And we eventually have to say to employees, okay, you had flu and you were home for 7 days, but you feel fine. We don't test flu people before we tell them to come back to work. We tell them, you feel fine, come back to work, use precautions, wear a mask. And in our case with COVID, because it's so transmissible, we would just advise them to wear a mask. So we would just tell people to still be cautious, but that the test itself is probably a little bit less useful after you've already know that you're positive, if you feel completely fine. But wearing a mask is probably one of the most important things you can do after a COVID infection for a period of time.
Dr. Chu, we appreciate your time, appreciate your insight, and giving us this extensive amount of information on COVID-19, as there's a lot of information, a lot of misinformation and disinformation continuing to fly all around us out there about COVID-19. We've got another minute with you or so before we'll need to say goodbye today. Any last advice or information that would be important for our audience to be considering at this time regarding Omicron variant or anywhere else that we stand in this COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, I guess a couple things that I would say. Unfortunately, it's not over yet. I know we are all exhausted and tired, whether you're in healthcare or you're not in healthcare. I know everybody is, quite frankly, sick of talking about this topic. However, that doesn't mean we shouldn't still be vigilant related to it. We are still seeing a lot of hospitalizations related to the COVID crisis. And we do, of course, have some very effective therapies, whether it's monoclonal antibodies or antiviral therapies. We have a tremendous amount of information that's at the henryford.com website related to testing, vaccines, frequently asked questions information. So, Tyler, I would definitely direct your audience to our Henry Ford website. We have a lot of information to share related to vaccines and safety and pregnancy and those types of things.
Dr. Chu, thank you very much for your time and appreciate all your insight.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me today.
Thank you. We've been joined by Dr. Betty Chu, Associate Chief Clinical Officer with Henry Ford Health System, for the special COVID-19 update in partnership with the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce. And a big thank you to Suzanne Levine, their Executive Director at the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce, for helping us in arranging this and providing this information to us from Dr. Chu and the great staff over there at Henry Ford Health System. Again, you can learn more information about COVID-19 from Henry Ford Health System by visiting their website at henryford.com. That is going to do it for this Thursday edition of the Megacast. I want to give a big thank you to everyone that joined us on the show. Obviously, Dr. Betty Chu from Henry Ford Health System for being with us. Rachel Britz from Vitrine on Main, located in Plymouth, for being with us. The Oakland Literacy Council's Executive Director, Lisa Machesky. The President and CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, Jim Holcomb. And of course, our first guest on today's edition of the Megacast, Lisa Bahm from JVS Human Services. You can find all of our interviews and our full episode on demand by visiting our website at civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll also be able to find links to each and every one of our partnering TV, radio, and web outlets, so you can stay up to date on all their other great original programming in the 22 hours of the day, Monday through Friday. They're not joining us here on the Megacast. Also, go to our civiccentertv.com coronavirus link to stay up to date on information regarding COVID-19 from the CDC, the MDHHS, and the Oakland County Health Division, as well as our top stories making headlines across the state each and every day. Big thank you to our crew today, Calvin Brown, our studio producer and board operator, our technical director, for being with us here in the studio with me each and every day during our live shows. Jared Clark, our Zoom producer out in Troy, Michigan, at the offices of My Michigan TV. Larry Nyland, the king of television himself, our producer, getting everybody booked on this show, getting them ready to join us on our regular shows and getting us ready as well. And Maddie Muschin out at Master Control for helping us get both on and off the air. That is going to do it for today's edition of the Megacast. Steve Lato Live is on My next, and we'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Keeping Greater West Bloomfield connected during the coronavirus pandemic. 89.3 WBLD, Orchard Lake, West Bloomfield. Keagle Harbor, Sylvan Lake. 89.3